The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
And we're back, and it's just me and S2 this evening. Just a quick announcement. Our good friend Kevin Ramsey was attacked in downtown Nashville last night, and we want to send out best wishes for him to heal quickly. Kev's a big guy, so I'm guessing I seen a picture that his wife posted to our private Signal group. I'm guessing the other guy looks a whole lot worse. But anyways, Kev, if you're listening, our thoughts are with you, and we hope that you recover quickly. If you haven't tuned in since we instituted the new format, conflict of question is at the end of the video, so we can get off the X a little bit faster. And the brief for every episode is on patreon.com/survivaldispatch. Free members, paid members, both get access to it. So the updated brief is posted over there. Y'all can go download it and move along with us through it, or at your own pace afterwards. Alrighty, let's see here. So I changed up things a little bit here, and let me just get a name kind of off the screen. It's going to stick. They've got a new sticky header on AJ's site. This will probably get us some suppression right here, because if you put this website name, Breitbart's website name, in a video description, YouTube won't even let you save the video description anymore. But anyway, screw it. So some interesting news here. Number one, the prosecutor in the bankruptcy case, Sandy Hook versus Alex Jones, the judge in South Texas, Southern District of Texas, is pissed. The prosecutor essentially ran a sale to the Onion all through these sealed bids. The highest bid didn't win, not even close to the highest bid. There was no bidding competition. They basically tried to hand it over to the Onion. And so the bankruptcy court judge has squashed that. Elon Musk's attorneys have asked for standing at the next hearing for the bankruptcy court. And he's also been joking around as far as buying MSNBC. So it would be kind of interesting if Elon turns around and buys MSNBC, buys InfoWars, and puts Alex Jones on MSNBC. Talk about a pivot, my Lord. And it's no wonder they're not making money, by the way, because it was just revealed that that dude, Rachel Maddow, has been getting $30 million a year for one show a week, but they cut her back to $25 million a year. I don't know if she'll be able to, survive based on those circumstances, but it's a terrible shame. So the next link, by the way, is from that other website that we cannot save in video descriptions, but here we go. And I'm not sure what happened to this video. It says video not found, but I wasn't going to play the video anyway, because I really just wanted to speak to the topic of this. So we've got all the swamp creatures lining up against Tulsi Gabbard, and they're all saying that Tulsi is a Russian asset. She doesn't have American interests at heart. And the primary theme of the first chapter of tonight's episode is treason. And there is zero evidence, zero history of Tulsi Gabbard ever doing anything that could not be considered extremely patriotic to our country. This is a smear job, and this is the kind of stuff that needs to be squashed. And this is the kind of stuff that's, created this giant chasm between us and them in our country. And I hope she sues their ass off, to be quite honest with you. S2, what are your thoughts on them going after Tulsi Gabbard? I mean, are you aware of anybody who's more patriotic than she is?
No, this is going to backfire on them big time. And they're, like you said, she's probably going to end up suing them, whoever them is. But yeah, no, this is going to backfire. It's all of this stuff has already been backfiring on them. Nobody's paying attention to them anymore. And so Tammy Duckworth out of Illinois, that's no surprise.
Yeah, that's no surprise there. And then no surprise, Dana Bash from CNN. I mean, we've got to go after these people. They need to be held responsible for the propaganda and that this just the outright lies that they spread. I mean, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for them to put these lies out as fact.
I take this as a sign of fear, and then they should be afraid. They should be very afraid.
Yeah. So keeping in, line with the thought of, or the theme of treason, I should say, up next is Adam Schiff, who spread the whole Russia bullshit, one lie after another. Now he's magically a senator. I don't believe that there have been legitimate elections in our country other than the 2 out of 3 times that Donald Trump was actually awarded the win, even though he won 3 times. And JFK is the only other one. There's no way that people voted for Dianne Feinstein for over 50 years when she never had one campaign event her entire career. There's no way people vote for Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, all these, just absolute shit bags.
Well,
So
Adam Schiff is from California, right?
yes,
They're still counting ballots out in California.
yep, that's actually on I think chapter 2's list of links to share tonight. There's a meme out there with regards to India, a population like 1.2 billion, 640 million votes in their election. You have to show voter ID, and there's no machines. It's all paper ballots, and they're all counted the same day. So
Yep.
They can do that. We can't. Bullshit. It's all straight up cheating. But let's hear what this piece of crap Adam Schiff has to say here with regards to Pam Bondi. And I have some reservations with regards to Pam Bondi and her support for red flag laws, but I guess we'll see how she turns out. But let's hear this. This guy is like the poster child for treason in the past 10 years. Him and Pelosi, Schumer, all of them. Let's hear what he's got to say.
Well, I think the president has the right to nominate anyone who's qualified, who has good judgment and good character. It doesn't mean he's guaranteed Senate approval of whoever he nominates, and some of these nominees are deeply problematic. I'll be interested in the confirmation process. Will Pam Bondi continue to tell the big lie even under oath? Is she going to continue to say that the Justice Department should be prosecuting prosecutors who brought valid evidence before a grand jury found probable cause to believe Donald Trump committed crimes? That's not a basis to go after them. So she's going to have to answer tough questions. Tulsi Gabbard concerns me a great deal.
I got to jump in and make a couple quick comments here, Stu, and then I want to hear your thoughts. So for those of you who are not aware, what happened with the charges that he's referring to that went to a grand jury that voted to file charges against Donald Trump, they did something that is not usual, is very abnormal, and is being challenged in court. They drew a jury pool from Washington, D.C. alone, which is 96% Democrat. That's their stronghold. And got a grand jury there to essentially say that there was enough evidence to charge Donald Trump. Then they turn around and they went straight to Florida and filed it with a judge in Florida to say that, we're going to launch these charges against him because the grand jury said he's committed crimes. Of course, he committed no crimes whatsoever to speak of. And it's a brutal abuse of the law. So what this clown has been doing, there's only one way to describe it. This is straight up treason. S2, give me your thoughts on them manipulating the process by doing a grand jury in D.C., then taking that to Florida. That's not normal.
No, it's not normal, and it's not even more normal that they would appoint a special prosecutor that wasn't even vetted by Congress, which is a requirement. Adam Schiff, I'm sorry, he's a poster child for low IQ. There's not a whole lot to say about the guy except watermelon head.
Yeah, pencil neck, as Trump likes to call him. He's one of many bad actors, but again, at the end of the day, I do not believe that people like him have been legitimately elected. These are installed candidates working on behalf of whatever you want to call the bad guys, NWO, globalist cabal, whatever the case may be. But he should be scared because they weaponized the DOJ against Donald Trump. It's quite obvious that they weaponized the DOJ. We've now got emails and all sorts of other pieces of evidence showing that they weaponized the DOJ. You know what? I personally think that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and all these people who broke the law, we need to go after them. And word is that Donald Trump is putting together a committee to basically assemble the facts from the 2020 election as we found out all these individual things, and then go after everybody whose hands are dirty. And that includes this.
Yeah, I think he's definitely involved in that. He's right in bed with Pelosi on all of it.
Yeah, 100%. So let's move to another piece of crap. Alejandro Mayorkas, right? The head of the DHS. So here's what I've got to say on this. Number one, he was born in Cuba, which doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad person. I'm just painting a picture here. He was born in Cuba. He's now an American citizen. He renounced his Cuban citizenship, but he has Israeli citizenship. So he's a dual citizen of Israel and America. He does not have a valid oath of office, which, by the way, neither does any of the other people in the DOJ, like Merrick Garland, Jack Smith. None of them have a valid oath of office, okay? And you know what that means, S2, and some of our audience knows what's meant by that. But essentially, every single person in the Biden cabinet, we're talking around 35, 36 individuals, not one of them has a valid oath of office. And my good friend Todd Callender's research team found this out. So, if you haven't heard of Todd Callender, he is the federal level attorney that sued Lloyd Austin and the DOD over the jab and the troops. And there were 51 attorneys. He was the lead attorney because he's federally licensed. He'd been in front of the Supreme Court before. He's also the CEO of a global insurance company, bigger than Berkshire Hathaway. And he has all kinds of other interests. He owns the Cloud Hub social media platform, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So one of Todd's researchers was looking into one of the cabinet members, did a FOIA request. In that FOIA request, asked for their oath of office and was sent a defective oath of office. And the oath of office that came back for Merrick Garland wasn't signed and wasn't notarized. So Todd asked her to dig a little bit deeper. So she FOIA'd every last one of them, including this guy right here. And not one of them has a valid oath of office. So what does that mean? And when Todd was telling me this, I said, okay, I'm not an attorney, so explain to me what the consequences of not having a valid oath of office is. And he said, well, if you have a valid oath of office and you engage in traitorous and seditious activities, you're most likely going to be sentenced to death if you get convicted. And, it would be rare for somebody to escape a death penalty in that instance. But if you don't have a valid oath of office, you technically were not a government official operating in an official capacity. You are an imposter and you're posing as a government official. And the maximum sentence for that is 5 years in jail. So keeping all of that in mind, Mayorkas has thrown our border wide open. We've got a bunch of links coming up on the blood that's on his hands in particular, as well as everybody else in this Biden admin. And, he in particular needs to be held responsible for the damage he's inflicted on our country. And I can guarantee you he's at the top of the list of this committee that's going to be investigating this sort of stuff. As to, I know where you sit on this, but share with the audience your thoughts on Mayorkas in particular.
My thoughts on Mayorkas is I don't care if he is convicted of impersonating a government official. He's responsible for all of the human and child trafficking that's going on in this country. He's directly linked to it through his office. And regardless of whatever that penalty is for impersonating a government official, he has been basically aiding and abetting illegal immigration into this country. And for every single person that has come into this country, he should be given that penalty for every occurrence for all of those people, which would probably amount to about 1 million years in prison, which would equal a death sentence.
Yeah.
And I am of the full mind that there was a reason that Trump reinstated the death penalty for treason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. So keep it in line with this whole theme of treason, which is what this entire first chapter of tonight's episode is on. This is Nancy Pelosi's daughter, and she has been actively engaged in curing ballots with an army of volunteers for the past 18 days in California. And it looks like they're going to flip 2 congressional seats that were clearly awarded to Republicans through the election, and now they're engaged in all the cheating with her. I'm not even going to play the video because she's laughing about it. She thinks that this is funny. And so whether or not somebody is in the DOJ, the cabinet, or downstream from there, somebody like this is treason. This is absolute treason, and people have to be held accountable for breaking the law. So she's not a government official. She wouldn't face the death penalty, but she needs to face some sort of penalty. They're so comfortable with this. They brag about it. She brags about this in public. I mean, I don't know what more to say, S2. I mean, if you got anything you want to contribute, or like, you just
Well, I think what's important to remember, what people need to understand is what curing ballots means. Is she might be engaged in curing ballots, and basically what that means is if you go out and you vote, and for whatever reason somebody says that the machine couldn't read your ballot, whatever, then it goes to adjudication. And that is what curing the ballots means, is that you have somebody else sitting behind a desk looking at what you put on your ballot and determining what your intent was. And for all of the people in California that have voted and know for a fact that their votes have not been counted yet, I think you need to go take a look at your ballots and make sure that they're being counted and they're being adjudicated properly.
Well said. Well said. Okay, so moving on to the next article/video. I'm not going to play this whole video. It's 7.5 minutes long. If you want to watch the whole video,
Tom Homan. It's Tom Homan, man. Come on.
Well, exactly. That's what I was fixing to say. Number one, if you want to watch the whole video, again, go grab the brief off our Patreon. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. But the key point of this that I'm going to quickly comment on, then we'll play maybe a minute or two at the beginning of it, is that he's warning city and county officials across the country that if you impede the feds' mass deportation efforts, you're going to face consequences. And those consequences mean being criminally charged. It is a criminal offense to harbor illegal aliens in this country and to assist them. And I asked Todd this question. I said, how come we haven't charged any of these Soros DAs, mayors, etc.? And the reason I asked Todd, and I told him this, I said, because General Vallely asked me for my thoughts on why nobody's been charged. And I think there's a number of reasons why nobody's been charged in these official capacities. The first one would be you couldn't have charged anybody the past 4 years with this installed administration that clearly didn't win in 2020. You're not going to find any traction for bringing charges against people who are, sanctuary cities under this federal administration, this illegitimate federal administration. But that's fixing to change. Let's hear what Tom's got to say, and then we'll move on.
Stop us from what they're doing. They will not. I'm going to do this job. Men and women of ICE are going to do this job. You're not going to stop us. But let me give you a word of advice. If you impede us, there's going to be consequences. You cannot help us, but also read Title 8, United States Code 1324 III. It is a felony to harbor and conceal, knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien. So read that statute and don't cross that line.
You got that, big city mayors? But perhaps the most horrific result of their horrible immigration policy, losing track of more than 320,000 migrant children.
All right, so we're going to stop there just because that's old data. So the number that the DHS caught to was actually 325,000. And according to J.J. Carroll, Victor Avila, Tom Homan's team at Border 911, which I'm in touch with on an almost daily basis, the number is actually well over 500,000 children who've been brought across the border under the Biden admin and have disappeared and have been sold into the sex trades. And there were 95 executive orders issued by Joe Biden on his first day to completely undo everything that Trump had put in place at the border. They literally opened the floodgates. And if we have any people watching that say, well, yeah, we had a bipartisan bill. We had no bipartisan bill. We had a bill that would codified 3 million illegals per year allowed to come into the country and a path to citizenship for people who've broken the law. That's no solution. And that's why Donald Trump asked, his supporters, don't put this bill through. This is a complete and utter disaster. So We've got 500,000 youngins have disappeared here in child sex trafficking. We have an untold number coming up the Mississippi Delta by the cartels. They're moving them in containers, and they're moving them on container ships up the Mississippi and its tributaries, Tennessee River, Missouri River, etc. It gives them access to 60% of the lower 48. These are some massive numbers. On top of that, we have child kidnappings on a daily basis, typically from parking lots, where women and children are being sold into sex trafficking as well. So if you've been paying attention to Tom Homan, what he's basically been said, there's going to be a couple lines of effort here. The first line of effort is going to be to deport all of the criminals that were let into our country. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of criminals, convicted criminals. We know of at least 13,000 convicted murderers that this administration let into the country. And then they went on to do things like murder Lake and Riley and other innocent Americans. That blood is 1,000% on these traitorous sons of bitches' hands. So that's one line of effort. There's another line of effort that's going to be to find these children. The problem is that many of them are probably already dead. And why is child sex trafficking such a big deal? I mean, I had to go through a pretty serious education earlier this year from Victor Avila. If any of y'all who remember the Fast and Furious and the two DEA agents who were shot up in Mexico, Victor was one of them. His partner, Agent Zapata, died in his arms. Craig Sawman, Sawyer, and a whole slew of other people, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, who are working on interdicting child sex trafficking. It's big because the bad guys, meaning, Trenda Aragua, the cartels, they make more money off of human sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, than they do off of drugs. They sell the drugs. They have to go back, get more drugs and bring them in and sell them and have people use them. Whereas with these kids, they are prostituted out an average of 15 to 20 times a day for an average of 3 years. They put somewhere around $250,000 each per year into the bad guys' pockets. And then at 3 years, they either commit suicide or the bad guys kill them, because at that point in time, they're completely destroyed. It's unbelievable. S2, actually, a quick question for you. So we've discussed, meaning you and me and other people on Survival Dispatch, how are we going to come up with the manpower to do this mass deportation when the experts say we would have to add a minimum of 1 million law enforcement officers, right? So we need another 500,000. We had 1.2 million law enforcement officers under Trump. So city PD up to federal. Right now we're sitting at 660,000 because of defund the police and good cops just saying, screw it, I'm not going to do this anymore, when, they're getting charged when they shouldn't be charged. And I'm not saying that, cops are 100% innocent, but 99.99% of them are. And so we got 660,000 cops. We need a minimum of 500,000 to find those children and combat child sex trafficking. And we need another minimum of 500,000 to assist with mass deportations. So I can't reveal the source just yet, but I will soon. I'll be able to shortly. If you have military experience, law enforcement experience, or if you are a licensed armed security guard, there will be a campaign starting on January the 20th asking for people who fall into those categories to volunteer time and effort towards both of those lines of efforts. S2, do you want to speak to Tom Homan and those two lines of efforts?
Yeah, I know who your source is on that. They're still getting their act together a bit, but that was going to be one of the things that I was going to say, was that how many veterans that we have, able-bodied veterans that have GWAT experience, that are still able to function in that capacity. The second piece of it is, I say, what needs to be done is you take a lot of these useless agencies out there and you start shifting those resources over to the admin side for the deportations. You give them a script to go by, and you say, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then say adios, put them on a plane and send them out, period. A lot of these agencies out there that are in function right now within our federal government do absolutely nothing for us. They've done absolutely nothing for us for the past 20 years, and some of them have been just, terrible. Let's take a look at FEMA, for instance. We all know what they do. They do nothing. They supposedly are a logistics management organization that can't manage a ham sandwich. So that would be the first place I would start, is with FEMA, and shift their resources over into this. And if any one of those people is shifted over to assist in this deportation thing, they should be fired from government and never and be barred for life of ever holding any sort of federal government job if they're going to get in the way and impede anything.
Well, I mean, my opinion is, I agree with everything you said. My opinion is that the people who actually get in the way, they need to have criminal charges filed on them, and they need to suffer the consequences thereof. And I see that Beta Soy Boy, who's the mayor of Denver, has now backed off, his aggressiveness. He said, we're going to put 50,000 people in between, the unregistered illegals in our city and Tom Homan, and we're going to deploy our law enforcement officers against Tom Homan. And Tom Homan immediately, as he's doing all these news shows, basically said, go ahead, you're going to jail. You and everybody on your team is going to go to jail if you do that. Well, then he does a follow-up interview, and it was either MSNBC or CNN. I can't remember which one it was. Doesn't matter. Where he's doing like a mea culpa. Well, my passion got the best of me. I didn't really mean to say that. Yeah, he did. And I mean, I want to say the first I heard of sanctuary cities was mid-90s time frame. And ever since then, I've thought to myself, when we went through high school, we were taught that, federal law supersedes state law, supersedes county bylaws, city bylaws, et cetera, et cetera. And
that's backwards.
Well, yeah, what they're doing, this municipalities, these mayors, they don't have the right to go against federal law that says these are illegals and they need to be shipped out. I mean, Donald Trump is inheriting an absolute shit show. And if nothing else, I'm thankful that him and Tom Homan and the rest of the guys are, all over this, and that they're going to come pull through on this. I will add one more thing, and it's actually at the end of the episode for the homework as well. If you are not a law enforcement officer or former law enforcement officer, not a military vet, and not an armed security guard, you can get certified and licensed as an armed security guard fairly easy in the grand scheme of things, at least, and then volunteer to assist from there. And we will have more information coming up on that soon, because I know a whole bunch of people. I like the way Doc Pete said it, S2. Remember when he said this is going to take a number of us who have gray in our beards to help with these efforts?
Yep.
That is a very accurate statement as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's another component to this too. There are a lot of private contracting security companies out there that are probably willing to step up for this as well, and I'm sure they're all being contacted.
100%, yeah. Very valid point on your part. So,
which will bring me to another point with that too, is if you have a private contracting security company that's out there, the owner who is licensed can bring people in underneath him. And all you have to do is go through the background check, and they can bring you in underneath them under their license umbrella. So it's not necessarily, you will still have to qualify to be able to carry a firearm,
right,
but you can still be brought in up underneath their license.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest here. This is going to be messy, and these people are not going to go quietly. And it's good. There's going to be all kinds of violence, unfortunately, but we've got to deal with this immediately, which is why Tom Homan has pledged. Within an hour of Trump being sworn in, Tom Homan has said he'll already have his first arrests of people on their way to the border to throw them out of the country. So
I personally like the idea of putting it out there in the public and say to all of the illegal aliens that are in this country, you have a choice. If you self-report yourself as being in this country illegally, you can go back over to the Mexico side, you can stay there, and you can reapply for citizenship later on. If you don't, then you are out of this country forever.
Yep. Amen to that. So let's talk, tonight the topic is treason. This is absolute treason here, what happened to Lake and Riley. We've covered it multiple times. I'm sure everybody's aware that this guy had been thrown out of the country. The Biden admin let him back in. He ends up in New York City. New York puts him on a plane, flies him to Georgia. And then the whole 18 minutes is caught on the 911 call that she made of this piece of crap basically bashing her head in. And it's absolutely disgusting. Should have never happened. This blood is 100% on Mayorkas' hands and every other, person who supported this invasion of illegals. So the reason I brought up Laken Riley again, and I can assure you, will not be the last time that I bring up her name, because we've got to do it for her memory, if nothing else. So this is the piece of crap. Look at the shit that MSNBC put out there. I know you've seen this, S2, but I'm guessing that some of our audience hasn't. Laken Riley's killer never stood a chance.
Chance of what?
There was no question that he murdered her. So I don't know, but what I do know, I mean, this is in very bad taste from MSNBC, and as you saw in the previous slide, that they've been getting absolutely roasted on the internet. There's another part to this that's not included in this article, and that is that the judge refused to consider the death penalty for him because it would have harmful effects on the rest of the illegal aliens who are in America, and it might scare them.
I honestly think that was a pretty smart move, and I'll tell you why. Because the left is looking for a trigger right now. They're looking for a trigger event. And as high profile as this was, if he had been sentenced to the death penalty, chances are he probably would have sat in prison for about a year waiting for his turn to come up. But if that had happened, this very well could have been that one of those trigger events that they're looking for to be a catalyst for civil unrest like we had in 2020.
And that's entirely possible, and that's a legitimate perspective. My perspective is I want every illegal in our country to know that if you hurt one American citizen, one drop of American blood is shed, you're getting the death penalty. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is non-negotiable. And actually, that's one of Donald Trump's initiatives that he's going to put forward, that if an illegal kills an American, it's an automatic death penalty. So I hear what you're saying. We don't necessarily want to, stir things up, but the fact of the matter is this whole mass deportation is going to be pretty ugly and pretty messy. So I think that the people who are involved in letting that shitbag into the country, travel around the country, and then murder Laken Riley, we have to find a way to make the law impact them as well. So
I agree. I agree, but we have to get the situation under control first. And I think it needs to be a controlled burn at this point.
It's definitely not under control. I will grant you that. So check this out here. 39 children raped in the state of Massachusetts. And we're going to listen to this. I think the number was 13 illegals. And, this is Massachusetts is supposedly a sanctuary state. More blood on these people's hands. Another example of treason. And every last one of them needs to be held accountable.
Massachusetts has welcomed tens of thousands of illegals into her state and has, quote unquote, said that she is going to do everything in her power to fight back against Trump's deportation plan. Yet 3 illegals have just been arrested in the state of Massachusetts for raping children. 39 children. Why is this not on the front page of every news? 39 crimes against children because of the people we've let into our country illegally. Disgusting.
So, I mean, there's not really much for me to comment on here. It's pretty obvious where I stand on this stuff. I will say one thing alone, though. Chances are those 39 youngins, their lives are probably ruined as a result of this. They will go on to, do drugs, alcohol, anything to numb the pain. It'll haunt them the rest of their life. And they've essentially had their life stolen from them. I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not, Stu.
I think they'll be looking for the people that are responsible for letting it happen.
And that's, yeah, absolutely. That's another piece to this as well, right? So moving on to the next one here, and this is one that you already mentioned. There you go. 640 million paper ballots counted in a single day in India. And California, you can't see it because that video stuff's overlaying it. 15 million voters in California, 18 plus days. again, I'll move on because otherwise we're going to sound like a broken record. But the people who are facilitating this gong show need to be held responsible. All right, moving on to the next one here. So this is Eric Prince, CEO and founder of Blackwater. And I'm going to play the whole minute and 42 seconds, and then we'll comment on it.
Welcome back. I'm back with former Navy SEAL officer and the founder of Blackwater, Eric Prince. Eric, the last time you joined me, we were talking about the epic failures of the Secret Service protecting President Trump. What are you feeling today, and what does President Trump need to do in these next 2 months before taking office for best protection?
Well, the one thing that the Ukraine war has done is really accelerated warfare, the development of drone technology. And so now really the threat is not just a guy, an assassin with a rifle, it's an assassin with a drone that can launch it from beyond visual range, 10, 15, 20 kilometers away. I still recommend the Secret Service has put their very, very finest resources around President Trump now. I still would recommend that they be augmented by some military people from JSOC, from the SEAL Team 6, Delta Force level community, because I think it takes a hunter to spot a hunter, and you want people that are predators to look to see all the ways that they would try to kill the president, to figure out how to block those. And look, the risks have never been higher between cartels, Iranians, and other foreign adversaries. We need President Trump alive. We need it for our constitutional process. And I hope, I understand there's been a memo circulated asking for that, and I hope the current Secret Service leadership will accept that. Unfortunately, President Trump doesn't get to decide that until he takes over.
And you just, speaking of threats, you just mentioned the nuclear threat from Russia a moment ago.
Yes, very real, very dangerous.
Eric, we've got to talk more about that. We appreciate.
All right, S2. I mean, Eric Prince is a fairly controversial figure. People either love him or hate him. But he hit on using special ops, JSOC,
Gee, wonder where that came from.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have to happen, right? We're going to have our spec ops guys on this. And I can't remember if you were on the panel recently or not, but we've gone from something like 50,000 spec ops soldiers to 74,000 in recent years. So it's one small positive aspect of what's been going on with our military in recent years. And we've had a pretty big reduction in headcount, but it's good to hear that we have that many spec ops guys on board. I don't know that we really need to speak at length on this, but if you want to add something to it, S2, go ahead before we move on.
We beat that horse dead long ago.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. All right, so keep in mind this first chapter of tonight's episode is on treason, right? So the big food lobbyists are now trying to undermine, RFK's push for a healthier America, and this is a really complex situation. So, quick history lesson for those people who haven't, heard me speak to this before, but we had the war on fat in the 1980s, and we had to take fat out of everything because it's going to kill you. Fat is like the enemy, right? Not true. If you look at Native Americans before we came here, their diet was 50+% fat, and they were absolutely shredded. They weren't overweight. They didn't get overweight until we brought them alcohol and sugar, essentially. So when you take fat out of food, it tastes like crap. So they put sugar in to make it taste better. And the volume of sugar that Americans consume today versus, 40, 50, 60 years ago is an order of magnitude difference. Sugar is processed exactly the same way as cocaine, lights up the cerebral cortex the same way that cocaine does. Extremely addictive. So people eat this sugar-laden food, and of course their blood sugar goes up. But because these are high glycemic carbs, essentially, their blood sugar falls off a cliff. So now they have to eat again. And that's where this epidemic of, overeating and eating these crap products turns into, overweight, unhealthy people. And there was a story recently, I can't remember if I shared it on SDN or not, but there was a guy who worked for a large corporation. He was something like 350 pounds. He was dispatched to Italy for a year to work over there. Didn't change his diet at all. Ate all the exact same stuff. and came back home at 250 pounds. And within 3 months of being back home here in America, he was right back to 350 pounds. So our food supply is incredibly tainted and dangerous and not good for people at all. And then we have this whole thing of drugs. I mean, the number of people who are on SSRI, mood enhancing drugs is unbelievable. These are highly addictive drugs. And then we tie into the piece of Big Pharma being by far and away the biggest lobby in DC. Then on top of that, they're the biggest advertiser on mainstream media. During an election year, Big Pharma accounts for 50% of the revenue for mainstream media. During a non-election year, they account for 70%. And I mentioned this before. This is not just so that somebody watches the commercial and goes to their doctor and says, give me this pill. It's basically exerting influence over the mainstream media, saying, without us, you have no revenues. And we want you to push this particular narrative. And that's why when you see the videos where there's, dozens and dozens of news anchors, and they're all in unison as they preach the same bullshit propaganda. This has got the stuff that RFK is onto is it's a huge, furball, for lack of a better term. And I honestly think that they will continue, obviously, to go after Donald Trump, like to assassinate Donald Trump, but it's going to happen here as well with RFK, because he's threatening one of the most powerful forces in the world, and especially in our country. You want to add anything to that, RFK? Or RFK has to?
Yeah, yes, I would like to add. I would like to add. I would like to add something to that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's we look at how all of this started. If anybody understands the history of how our food chains have evolved and things like that, we had the Rockefellers involved in the medicine and the foods. We've had the Ford Foundation that was involved in some of this stuff. All of the people from the elitist families from back in the day that were in unison saying that they were for eugenics. That's essentially what they're doing. Is they've been using our food supply to keep us sick and to kill us off for decades. And when we say that RFK is threatening that, yeah, he is. He's threatening that big time, because it not only threatens their funding, but it also threatens their ideology. And when you start threatening somebody's ideology, that becomes more dangerous than threatening their money, because they have all the money they need. So,
True.
yeah, I think he's a huge threat to them in that respect.
Yeah, well said. So keep it in mind, the theme of the first chapter is treason. I'm looking at another 10 tabs for us to go through. So the next one here, we've already brought up his name, and that's Jack Smith. And Steve Bannon has basically said, don't destroy any evidence and don't think about leaving the country. And Jack Smith is a particularly egregious example of the lawfare that's been waged against Donald Trump. Number one, the position that he's in is not an official position. He should have never been put in it. There was no funding approved from Congress for this, so-called position he had. But he's also done some really shady things. When they seized a bunch of documents at Mar-a-Lago, they took the documents, they put them into duotang binders and stuff, and then they put cover pages on them saying this is top secret and everything. And it was on stuff that was not top secret. But they tried to make it look like the stuff was all marked top secret and stuff that Trump hadn't declassified. This guy is as crooked as a dog's hind leg, and he needs to pay for his treason. S2, you want to speak any further to Jack Smith?
Well, I was thinking, they have put out the indictments in the International Criminal Courts for Netanyahu and a couple of other his folks. I was thinking maybe Jack Smith could go back to his old job at The Hague.
Right. I want to mention too, by the way, with Jack Smith, when Todd Callender's team voided his oath of office, he doesn't have an oath of office. He doesn't have a defective oath of office. He has nothing. The DOJ, after many back and forth between them and Todd's research team, came back and said, we have no record of any oath of office for Jack.
Well, Jack Smith isn't a sworn officer of the United States judicial system. He's a member of the International Criminal Courts, which is really kind of a joke because nobody gives a shit about that anyway.
Yeah. So, all right, let's move on to the next one here. And, there's no way that we can go through news stories and articles on treason without including the guy here is the biggest, treasonous person ever. If you guys want to go back and watch, we did an episode recently with Patrick Byrne. He was a very high level intelligence asset here, Senate Intel Committee. And he brought information back to Obama that the Turkish government had bribed Hillary with $20 million to do some things that would be favorable towards their country. This is when she was Secretary of State. So Obama dispatched Patrick Byrne with $18 million to do a second bribe. And not that they couldn't make the first one stick, but they wanted additional evidence that Hillary Clinton had taken bribes. So it happens, he bribes her with $18 million, reports back to Brennan and Obama. Then Brennan and Obama, they go to Hillary and they say, look, you're going to be president for the next 8 years, but we're going to put a Bunsen burner under your ass. And if you're a good girl, we'll keep the flame low. If you're a bad girl, we'll turn the flame up. And when your 8 years is done, Michelle's going to do 8 years. Obama had a 24-year plan to essentially turn America into a communist state. And he said he's a huge fan of Saul Alinsky for many, many years, and the however many steps it is to convert America to socialism. But this is something that's been in the news lately, especially regarding Nancy Mace pushing back against men and women's bathrooms. And this is where it all started, by the way. So let's hear. I have a hard time even saying this guy's name without tacking something on just of an insult.
O'Dumbo. Just call him O'Dumbo.
2016, President Obama sent a letter to every school district in the United States. And President Obama said, every child has a right to use the bathroom of the gender that they identify with. And President Obama threatened the state departments of education. If you don't let transgender children use the bathroom of the gender they identify with, we will cut your funding. We will cut your money. We will cut your grants. And so Barack Obama, more than any other politician in the world, fed the transgender movement.
All right. So let's briefly talk about this, just because, again, it's in the news frequently right now with stuff that's going on in Congress. S2, I'll let you go first, because I feel like I'm repeating myself on some of the stuff. So put a fresh spin on this if you can.
This transgender stuff is just another playbook out of the communist playbook. It's to destroy the families. It's to destroy self-identity. Basically, when you tell a boy that he's a girl and you tell a girl that she's a boy, it basically destroys your identity. And from my perspective, that is exactly what the plan has been all along, was to destroy the individual, because that is what communism is all about. It's all about the good for the state. It's not about the good for the individual. And what can I say about Obama? He's just a piece of trash. It needs to be taken to the curb and be done with once and for all. And personally, I think he's another one that should be investigated. He should be top on the list of Trump's commission to investigate these people.
Yeah. Quickly comment from Kanzi asking about the classified documents Biden had. Biden took classified documents when he was vice president, who does not have the same rights to do that like a president does, and had them sitting in his garage. And there was absolutely nothing done there. It's just another example of the
and at Penn State.
Yeah, the imbalance. So let's talk Department of Government Efficiency here. Both Ron Paul and Rand Paul are going to be involved with Vivek and Elon in some capacity here. I have seen some absolutely ridiculous usages of taxpayers' money recently. We all knew they were there. We all hear them from time to time. There was a big list somewhere, and I just didn't have a chance to get it in tonight's brief, but check this out. $100,000 to study if tequila or gin makes sunfish more aggressive. There was one of these other ones. They spent something like $2 million, and I can't remember what the animal in question was, but they were giving them drugs to see if it turned them gay. Nearly $1 million to study if cocaine makes Japanese quail more sexually promiscuous. What? And $750,000 to study if the moon landing line was one small step for man or one small step for a man. the study was inconclusive. I mean, this is all treasonous activity. There's no other way to cut it. This is all treason. And it is such a mess. Actually, I want to back up just quickly to the Department of Education. So Jimmy Carter forms the Department of Education in 1979. We're number 1 in the world for education, especially math performance. We're now number 24. Department of Education has been used as the part of the fourth unauthorized branch of government that's not in the Constitution, as a big stick wielded by the executive to do essentially the stuff that Obama did. If you don't let kids use the bathroom that they want, you remove your federal funding. This is one of the reasons we need to completely nuke the Department of Education. We do not need a federal Department of Education. We've spent a shit ton of money on it and results have gone backwards. This needs to go back to the states. Comments on Doge, S2.
Great idea. There was something here recently that I ran across that was one of these kind of along the same lines, but even more importantly, the what was the Inflation Act? Jog my brain with
Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, so the Inflation Reduction Act, this was a very interesting find that I ran across here not too long ago, where there are more, but there were essentially 4 NGOs that received money for doing climate change work.
Okay.
And it turns out that these 4 NGOs were not doing anything for climate change at all. Yet one of them got $1 million, another one got $1 million, and the additional 2 got $50 million for doing absolutely nothing. Now, the trail that goes back to these NGOs also linked straight back to communist leftist groups. And what these NGOs do is this is just another way of filtering the money by grifting off of these things. And what they do is they go out and they create to diffuse the large chunk of money that they got. They go out there and they form other smaller NGOs up underneath them, and they filter that down to them. And that's where a lot of these groups like Black Lives Matters and those kind of folks are getting their funding from. And I think that's probably where they're starting to get it from now, based on this Inflation Reduction Act. It's all out there. It's an open source intelligence piece. It's all over the place, so it's not hard to find.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to make a quick comment because you can add to it as well. We've had some comments recently, and we've had these in the past, by the way. This is not something that's new, chastising us for covering some piece of news. I'm trying to think of what the most recent one is. It'll probably come to me in a minute. And the comment basically is that we were guilty because we were putting this information out there that the bad guys were going to use against us. And we said too much. And there's an old adage that security through obscurity does not work. Virtually everything we report is open source intel, and the bad guys already know everything. We're informing you of what the bad guys are aware of and what they use to leverage it. We're not the information leak. I mean, you live in the intel world, so give me your thoughts on that.
Well, once again, let's talk in terms of good versus evil. Okay, evil is obligated to tell you what they're going to do. They're obligated to. So they keep all of these records out there and they obscure those records by putting them into databases that they think nobody will ever think to look at. Well, guess what, bad guys? Guess what, you, pardon my French, you evil fucks out there that might be listening to this? We know where to look. And we're all educating other people out there on where to look for these things. We have become the undefeatable army of people that are scouring your databases that you made public because you are required to make them public. Everything that you do is no longer a secret anymore. So take notice on that one.
Well said. I'm glad you added the comments to that. So this next piece here, I personally consider this treason, and I consider this treason for a very simple reason. So up until 2018, even a shitty organization like the World Health Organization, WHO, said that transgenderism was a mental illness. And we have virtually no psychiatric care for these people now like we did. It started the decline in the 50s with the peak of psychiatric in-care beds in the 1950s. We're now at an all-time low. And these are not people who are mentally sound. I mean, you have somebody who's the head of Health and Human Services, who's a dude, who thinks he's a woman, who cut his dick off. I mean, it's
Did he?
just,
Did he fully transition?
that's what I've read. The guys, these people should not be running the government. You got the bald kid, whatever his name was put in charge
Department of Energy. Yep.
nuclear something or other, Sam Brinkman or whatever his name was, and then he didn't get fired until he got caught stealing women's luggage from airports multiple times. These people are deviant and mentally ill, and so if somebody's mentally ill, you can't necessarily say they are guilty of treason, but you can say the administration that put people like this in positions of power, that's treason. You are not doing your job. You are not appointing the most capable people to do the job because of DEI and all this other bullshit pandering to this sort of crap here. I tell you what, I don't have a lot of friends who are gay, but I have a handful of friends who are gay, and every last one of them despises the transgender movement because it makes them look bad. They've said to me, we don't support this. We didn't ask for this pedophilia and gender bending bullshit. And they're pissed off, rightfully so. But again, if you appoint somebody like this, you've committed treason, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you can say what you want about it, but if you had stayed in the closet, you probably wouldn't have had this problem.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole. My concern, really, again, chapter 1 tonight is treason, and appointing people like that to positions of power is treasonous, in my opinion. So, here's a post from Insurrection Barbie. She's got some pretty decent content, all original content on her part. So I like this, and I'm going to read through this as quickly as possible because I know it's an eye test for those people who are watching on their phones. But excuse me, you did not hear one single word from the media or the left when, number one, Ashley Biden's diary came out where she said Joe Biden took inappropriate showers with her. 2, there were pictures of naked underage girls with Hunter Biden on his laptop. 3, Kamala Harris protected the archdiocese in San Francisco who molested children because they donated to Democrat politicians. 4, Biden and Harris lost 325,000 unaccompanied minor children, UACs, they're referred to them, by the way, and it's over 500,000, and didn't investigate whistleblower testimony that children were being released into the company of known criminals and gang members. But we're bombarded every single day with the same old bullshit, allegations of sexual assault, against Gates, Hegseth, so on and so forth. I want to mention this as far as her comment on the child sex trafficking, because it's such a big problem. It's something that we've been knee deep in now almost the entire year. And one of the 94 executive actions on Biden's first day that opened our border up was to get rid of the quick DNA tests. So up until that point in time, here's this guy or woman coming across the border with a youngin', and they would immediately administer these rapid DNA tests. You get the results in 20 minutes. And when they threw that out, basically these are all bad guys bringing children across the border to sell them into child sex trafficking. And there's no DNA test. So it's all just done on their verbal, oh yeah, this is my niece, or this is my daughter. And, that's absolute treason, no matter how you cut it. The 51 intelligence officers who said that Joe Biden or Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation, that's treason. These are all treasonous activities, and they all need to be accountable for what they did. Do you want to add anything to that mess?
I don't think I can add much more to that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff has come up so many times. That's exactly the case. It's hard to add anything more to it other than to say this is evil and these people need to pay. So Andrew Tate, I follow him. I can't say that I like all of his posts, but this is a good one. This is very, very accurate. There's no way to be a legacy journalist without being an objectively bad person. To purport their hatred, you must ignore all nuance and quite often ignore your own personal experience. Self-soul sacrifice at the feet of the machine for low-level fame and an ego boost. So now, again, we're back to the mainstream media telling lie after lie after lie as the propaganda arm, the mouthpiece of, again, the NWO globalists, whatever you want to call them. I despise these people. Like Dana Bash is a great example. These are just These are not good people. And just like Andrew Tate says, they are objectively, these are bad people. They know that they're spreading complete lies. And it's just, they need to be held accountable for what they're doing as well. And that's a tough one, right? I don't know if you have any ideas on this, but, you know, we're all libertarians, lowercase L, survival dispatch, which is kind of like, you know, we've had this strategy for years, do whatever you want, just leave the rest of us alone. And it clearly hasn't worked. But if you put something in place like truth in broadcasting, which, by the way, John Kerry and Hillary Clinton in 2004 supported a bill that was in front of Congress called that truth in broadcasting. And if people in that industry knowingly publish false information, they were going to lose their broadcast licenses. I was surprised to see the two of them on there. And I don't know what came out of the George Bush admin that precipitated them to create that law, which, by the way, died in committee. But here's the problem. Who's the arbiter of truth? And something needs to be done. I think everybody can agree something needs to be done. But how do you do that and keep it fair? Because that arbiter of truth is where absolute power corrupts absolutely. So before
I think one of the first things,
before I move on, S2, tell me what you think about them being held accountable by putting their broadcast license on the line. And how do you do that?
so in a lot of areas in life, professions, you have to have a license to be able to perform your functions. You know, if you're a doctor, you have to have a doctor's license. If you have to be a security guard, you have to be licensed, and in other areas as well. And I think in order to be considered a journalist and to be able to put yourself and your opinions and you know, first off, let's stop putting opinions first. Your opinions don't matter. The news is called news. It's not called, it's the Dana Bash Hour. Start reporting on the news and stop reporting on your opinions. This whole media machine has become nothing more than an editorial. That's all it is. Now back to my licensing aspect of this, I think in order to be able to be publicly allowed to put your information out there, you should have to apply for a license, and it should go before a board who approves it or disapproves it. And if you are approved to become a journalist in that capacity, then you also stand to be at risk for losing your license and never being able to do your profession again. And that's what I think should be done. I think they should all be licensed. And that way you're not holding an entire organization responsible for the acts of one person.
So
But if there are more than one, then you start looking at conspiracy, then it becomes a more serious crime.
What happens if someone like you or me goes fishing on a boat without a fishing license?
Oh, I can tell you what happens. Oh hell, what's the name of him now? The guy that runs around on the water all the time, the forest
Coast
ranger or
Guards?
whatever. Yeah, well, Coast Guard or whatever they call them on the intercoastals. But
Here it's in Florida, it's FWC, Florida Wildlife Commission.
yeah, that's it. Those guys that run around out there, I can guarantee you they'll pull you over. They pulled me over for having a trolling motor on my canoe.
Yeah, so if your country will slap you down for fishing without a license, why shouldn't I love your suggestion. Let's drill down, right? So instead of just like the network having a license, individual journalists require a license. That's no different than you making me have to have a fishing license if I go on a boat. A lot of states, if you're fishing from the shore, you don't need a license, but that's why I specifically said boat. But it's insanity. Just want a quick shout out to Handy Prepper. You should be recognized as best channel on social media. We really, really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Handy.
And we will move on to the next one, which I've already pulled up here. So Cat Turd basically says, can't wait for Trump to appoint Matt Gaetz as special counsel to go after the deep state traitors. And that would be a very interesting development. And my gut tells me from everything that I've read and absorbed, that's probably going to happen. And it's funny here, even Roger Stone, special counsel Matt Gaetz, I rather like the sound of it. So that for sure is going to scare the crap out of the swamp creatures. Here's another piece of I put it in the first chapter in Treason, because really that's what it is we have millions of acres of American farms have been bought up by Chinese, many of them in close proximity to military bases. And you know what? These types of foreign nationals should not have those types of assets under their direct control inside of America. And there's a few movements afoot that are going to try and force governments, specifically to divest themselves in investments in China. But I want to see it go the other way as well, and basically say China can't invest in certain things like our major farms. Thoughts on this aspect, Stu?
My thoughts on the aspect are, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, but just like Japan did after a certain period of time, they became an isolationist country. And I think that everybody thinks that our existence relies on trade with other global entities, and it doesn't. We're a very resource-rich country. What we lack right now is a skilled workforce, because they have moved our workforce into the services arena rather than into the manufacturing arena. We still have those abilities. There are a lot of old timers out there that know how to make things, that know how to manufacture things, how to get manufacturing companies started. I think this country needs to go through that period of isolationism, and I think we need to guard our borders like our lives depend on it, because the life of this country does depend on it.
Yeah, very, very well said, us too. Thank you. Much more eloquent than my points on that. All right, moving on to the next one here. So Scott Pressler has done an amazing job. He moved from California to Pennsylvania just so he could spend more time there, recruiting people to vote MAGA. And now we've got this gong show happening in Bucks County, where one of the people in charge of the election commission said on video that she was going to continue to count ballots that had not been signed and dated, even though the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania had just ruled, specific to their case, by the way, that you can't count ballots that aren't signed and don't have a date on them. How do we know that this is not something that was just bullshit thrown into the mix afterwards? And even by counting those votes, it didn't change the outcome whatsoever. So what does Scott Pressler do? I won't play his video. If you want to listen to the video, go download the brief from Patreon. But basically he gets in front of them and he says to this lady, he says, I'm coming for your seat peacefully, but I'm coming for your seat in 2027. And her response is, have at it. And here's the thing. Since then, she's backed off on all things. She's like, well, my emotions got the best of me. And I didn't mean to say, that we should break the law, because she said something to the effect that we no longer have rule of law. So why should she have to follow the law when nobody else does? I mean, these people think that they're untouchable, but there's going to be a come to Jesus starting January 20th for people like this. What she's doing is committing treason against the country. She is manipulating and cheating the election and the election results. And all these people who do these things that are illegal, every last one of them has to be held accountable. And if nothing else, if that was like Trump's sole legacy through his second term, I would be happy with the outcome from that, just stomping this shit out. Do you have anything you want to add as far as Scott Pressler is concerned, as to?
Yeah, this is one of the things I mentioned on last night's cast. One of the things I find is very interesting with all of these mayors and these officials and everything, you ever notice that when they get the extreme amount of pushback that they get, that all of a sudden they fall back on their feelings? My feelings got the best of me. Let me tell you, I'm going to say it again, you people out there that are probably listening, you're a bunch of evil fucks and nobody cares about your feelings.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Very well stated. You know what? When I hear millennials in particular start a response to a question by saying, well, I feel, the hair stands up on the back of my neck. I'm like,
mine too.
You don't give a shit what I feel, and I sure as hell don't give a fuck what you feel. So, stop.
In fact, I worked for one of the best bosses I had in the world. And I was like that at one point in time where I would start off my sentences or I would start off a document that I was writing and I would say, I feel. And I realized how stupid that sounded. And I stopped doing it immediately and I've never done it since.
Good for you. Yeah, I mean, I hear those words and I just think, golly, get over. This is the participation trophy generation. Nobody gives a shit what you feel. Nobody cares what I feel. That's just because you feel it doesn't make it true, and doesn't mean it should happen. So, this is actually the last tab before we wrap up on chapter 1. So the treason. So, have you seen what they're already floating for 2028? Let me play this so you can see who they're floating as the options.
Another turd. They're floating another
Kamala
turd.
Harris is now the 2028 front runner.
Did you catch that? Listen again.
Harris is now the 2028 front runner. The word salad queen who fumbled the ball and couldn't articulate a single policy without telling us about her being a middle class kid, garnering 41%.
All right, so the
You gotta be
reason
shitting me.
Yeah, I know. The reason I put that in at this stage in the first chapter, as far as treason, every single person in that picture of people that are potentially in the running for the next Democrat primary, every last one of them has committed treasonous acts. Every last one of them, and that tells me that they just haven't learned their lesson. I mean, they keep reverting back to, we're going to double down on transgenderism, we're going to double down on illegals. They just don't get it. The American public has spoke, and we don't want it, and it's not going to happen. And it amazes me that they just double down on the Obama ideology. And again, those are all people who've committed treason in one form or another. So, all right, listen, we're going to play a quick message from one of our sponsors, CCW Safe. We'll be right back.
If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
So there's a link down below for CCW Safe. We appreciate it when you support our sponsors. You're going to love this next one. So now we're pivoting away from treason to kind of a grab bag of things that are, top of mind, whether it be, top news items, headline items, or top posts on X. You're going to love this one, Stu. Like, you're absolutely going to love this one. And it's Elon's comments, hilarious. Meanwhile, some idiots are still building manned fighter jets like the F-35, and nothing but respect for our pilots. They're the best in the world. But check this out. This is one drone operator, by the way. Those are all drones being controlled by one person. Drone swarm.
Yep.
All right, so we'll pause it there.
I think they need to turn their rates down on their motors a little bit.
A lot of RPM going on there. Sounds like a bunch of locusts. But anyway, so we started, 2 years ago, this coming October, trying to make our audience aware of the drone threat domestically, not just militarily and outside the country. So there's some intel out there that the bad guys, meaning terrorists, would use drones to deliver aerosolized fentanyl, aerosolized anthrax, other chemical and biological agents in open air venues, and doing it simultaneously across the country to, create a massive amount of panic amongst the American populace. That piece of software, Drone Swarm, was written in Hollywood. So the one operator could control up to 5,000 drones for light shows. 2019, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard used that software to send drones into Saudi Arabia, and it took them 20 minutes to destroy the largest oil production facility in the country, Saudi Arabia, and in the blink of an eye, they nuked 5% of the world's oil output. And I've seen some people make some comments, all I need is double-aught buckshot. Listen, I hate to break the news to you, but that's complete bullshit. My youngest son is at Fort Benning teaching 5-man squads on how to deal with FPV drones. So first-person view drones that are low. We're not talking ISRs and Predators that are 10, 20,000 feet up that you can't see. And we have no good defense against them right now. We've even brought in products like the Skynet shotgun shells, and they failed miserably. You have very short range out of your shotgun, nowhere near close enough to take these things down. Our policy right now, or our SOP, I should say, for our Army at least, is if you are confronted by an FPV drone, to throw a smoke bomb and try to obfuscate yourself. Well, here's the thing. Most of these drones have thermal cameras on them, and you're not hiding from thermal. Your heat signature is still visible to that drone, which, by the way, is, calling home, doing the ET call home with your coordinates. So the next step is they're instructed to shoot it down with their duty weapon. So, 5.56 AR, essentially M4. And
good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck with that. And then there's other people who say things, well, all you got to do is block, radio frequencies and stuff. That's not true. There are drones that are 100% AI, artificial intelligence. Israel used them to map out the tunnels in Gaza and to hunt down Hamas terrorists and kill them autonomously with no human intervention whatsoever. And I want to say maybe 6 months ago or so, one of those autonomous drones popped up out of the tunnels and ended up smoking a vehicle that was full of UN, observers, that it shouldn't have done it. It's Skynet coming for sure. Again, we don't have a good defense against drones, and especially when you have one operator can send 5,000 like that. Here's the other thing. A lot of the drones that the military ones, you can cut RF all you want. They are pre-programmed and they make their own decisions. And some of them even have a physical tether back to the operator. So the Germans now have a drone that requires no radio frequency because it has a fiber optic cable that it takes. And I want to say it's maybe like 10 kilometers long, 6 miles, 6.2 miles long, something like that, so that they can maintain human control over that drone if somebody were to block RF or anything like that. Our best chance of defending against drones, there's a couple of them. Number one would be put, some form of netting mesh over top of areas, say like open air venues like football stadiums. The other one would be to use energy directed weapons. So that,
Yes.
And with energy directed weapons, there's a bunch of benefits, right? So here's the funny thing is Mike Stern and I did this video on the threat that drones pose a couple years ago. Immediately, the keyboard warriors came out of the woodwork that we didn't know what we were talking about, and that we were just fishing for clicks or whatever you want. You can't make this stuff up. A week to the day later, there was an RFP, a request for proposal, that showed up on the front page of sam.gov. This is where all federal contracts are awarded and managed. And the RFP, the request for proposal, was specifically for handheld EMP weapons that could be used, so electromagnetic pulse, that could be used to nuke the circuitry in the drones and make them crash, but still leave enough physical components that we could hopefully get some intel off of them. It's a very real threat. We do not have really good widespread solution to this right now. And anybody thinks that they're going to shoot down an FPV drone at a couple 100 feet above them with a shotgun or an AR, like S2 said, good luck with that. So S2, I mean, both of us have experience with drones, but you've got more experience than I do. And you even build drones. So would love to hear your thoughts on how do we defend against FPV drones?
Yeah, the energy directed weapons, they actually have some of those available now. That's really the only way that you're going to defeat an AI drone. And the other problem, they talk about shooting it with your service weapon. I don't know if anybody realizes, but some of these drones that they're putting out now can fly up to speeds of 200 miles an hour.
Incredible.
you're going to have a really big lead on that drone to even think about hitting that. A really big lead. So from what I can see is, Trump has talked about building this Iron Dome. And what some of the things that I've been studying here recently has been plasma energy capture. The We have some of this energy that's already coming off of towers that we have. We have AM radio towers out there that give off a tremendous amount of energy that could be tapped into for that sort of thing, and they're all around the country. So if we wanted to build an Iron Dome, we could use that as the infrastructure to capture that energy to disable these drones very easily. One of the things they tell people is if you run into one of these AM radios towers out there, don't touch it because you will instantly become a crispy critter. So there's been a lot of things, a lot of my speculations around the things that Trump wants to do, and I think a lot of it is based on energy that we have seen untapped. Where he's been getting into Bitcoin now, I see tremendous opportunities there for energy collection just based off of the thermal energy that data centers are going to generate, the amount of heat that they generate. And if we could channel that heat to make energy, if we could use some of Nikolai Tesla's old theories, which is the energy capture that I was talking about. There was an experiment recently done by a gentleman and another group out there. The names escape me right now, but um, the guy built an energy collection unit, and they did a inside of an AM radio tower. They actually proved that this antenna could collect that energy and pass it through. And they showed just in an instant, they had to turn it off after a minute because the capacitor was way too small for it. But they showed that by putting it next to this tower, they could capture the radio wave frequency energy back into this device and be able to turn it into usable energy. It generated 14.38 volts for about 2 minutes.
Wow.
So that's just that energy collection. That's not the energy storage. So back to the whole drone thing, I think that if we were to strategically use those AM radio towers, which give off all of their energy, not in a directional, but more of an omnidirectional versus FM, I think if we could use those radio waves to build that Iron Dome, I think that would be very effective.
Yeah, well said, well said. So I'm looking at the rest of the brief here. We have got a ton of links that we probably aren't going to get to because I think I got a little too ambitious when I put the brief together today. So S2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip through about half a dozen of them, and then you can pick which ones you want to comment after that, if that's okay with you. And I will go through these fairly quickly as well so that we get back on track time-wise. Okay, so this here is the boss of Fagwar. I don't call them Jaguar anymore. They're Fagwar. That says that the criticism of new advert is vile hatred and intolerance. No, it's not. You're a car company. You make cars, advertise your cars, and stop jamming this transgender fucking bullshit down our throats. We're sick and tired of it. And you know what? My wife wanted a Fagwar for the longest time. And we were thinking of maybe buying one in the coming year. Yeah, it ain't going to happen. We'll go with another brand. We've had Audis, Mercedes, BMWs. We always have trucks, but occasionally we splurge and buy a sports car. Will not be a Fagwar at all.
You'd have to buy two. You'd have to buy two anyway.
Because
you have to have one to drive while the other's in the shop.
There you go. Right on. That's good. That's good. All right. So kind of in the same vein of these mentally ill people, a California school official compared a Save Girls sports shirt to wearing a swastika. Outrageous and dangerous rhetoric. I'm glad they're suing, and I hope the girls win big. Thank God there's a new sheriff in town. Amen to that for sure. Okay, next one. I have not seen many people discussing this. This is fairly recent, but footage from Sean Diddy Combs' Notorious Parties allegedly features Justin Trudeau in scenes that will rock the political establishment in Canada and send shockwaves around the world. These people are sick and perverted. I'll tell you what, the Epstein list and the Diddy list, I want to see every single name that's on them. All right, moving on to the next one here. What is going on in Canada? So I'm going to actually play this because this is what we would have been seeing here in America if the election had gone the wrong way. It just absolute hooliganism. There's no other way to describe it. All right, moving on to the next nutcase, Joy Reid, probably the most racist person on TV, bar none. She is now saying that we are going to use the military to shoot American citizens. Let's listen to this crap for a minute.
Planning to do. I mean, one of the things that Russ Vought is advocating for is the elimination of all the post-Watergate norms in order to weaponize the DOJ. And he also is somebody that's advocating for deploying the military against U.S. citizens in order to quench dissent or protests. So when you have a guy like John McEntee and that database...
Liar. Absolute liar. This is the stuff we've been talking about right here, S2. Under your model, if she had a license to be a journalist, she should lose it for allowing these complete fabricated bullshit lies to be spewed out there.
Part of the prevention, just, they check off all the boxes in terms of like their professional skills. It's also that, they're sufficiently loyal that they will allow us to do all these things that otherwise would be illegal or not allowed to be done.
And the thing is, you can't say that enough. And I want you to say more about that, because you're talking about deploying the U.S. military. Remember, Mark Esper, who was Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense for a while, told him, no, you cannot shoot American citizens. You can't have the military shoot American citizens. He's going to replace people in the Department of Defense with people who will say you can, and that you can deploy the military against protesters, that you can arrest journalists.
Oh my God. So DOD Directive 5240.01 is the DOD directive with regards to deploying our military domestically. And the Biden admin on September 27th, very quietly, didn't announce it. They updated that DOD directive to say that the president could deploy the military against American citizens on American soil. And these liars are, everything that they say is what the Democrats or what Biden, Obama, not just Democrats, the Republicans, Democrats, they're both shitty parties. They're both traitors. They're two different sides of the same coin.
But by the way, I think part of that licensing thing also should require a psychiatric and IQ test.
Well, none of these people would clearly pass it in under those rules. But what she is saying right here is demonstrably false and creating more hatred and division and essentially promoting violence against Donald Trump and Donald Trump supporters. This shit's got to end, because here's the thing, and you know this, and anybody who follows us regularly knows this. The whole DOD Directive 5240.01 being updated wasn't even noticed by anybody for a couple weeks. And then somebody found out about it and ran with it like wildfire. And, you know, the scenario that was considered at the time was Jamie Raskin was saying, well, we just won't certify the election for Donald Trump on January the 6th. And then we know we'll be in civil war conditions and we'll just deploy the military to kill all these crazy MAGA voters. I mean, this shit is incendiary. And this is one of the reasons that for many, many years, I listen to NPR, I watch MSNBC, I watch CNN, I watch Fox, and I read all sorts of independent stuff across the entire spectrum. Because if you can't cut through all the bullshit to figure out that she is spewing absolute bullshit, there's no hope for you. There's absolutely no hope for people who are not intelligent enough to understand this stuff. I mean, anyway, I'll get off of that. I want to play just a little bit more, and we'll move on to the next one in the interest of expediency.
Journalists for reporting things that Donald Trump doesn't like, that sort of thing, right?
That is exactly right. One of the things that Russ Vought did after he sort of left the administration in this sort of interregnum period that he's had, and has been referenced with that 180-day agenda, is that they have been building out the legal documentation, or what they consider to be the legal documentation, to justify internally the deployment of the military. I know it sounds hysterical. How can we possibly? This sounds so outrageous. No, this is part of the plan. Like they literally wrote a plan down and then prepared all the supporting documentation so they could check off that box. And then this is where the personnel piece comes in. They're making sure they have the right people to implement it. Russ Vought gave a speech where he talked about the fact that he was planning on doing this, or at least to have the resources ready.
Where he talked about. I mean, his nuts haven't even dropped yet.
So that if there was sufficient blowback, they could deploy it. And I just want to put a bow on it to note that one of the through lines here is why they want to sort of, it's not just revenge against their political opponents. That obviously gets a lot of fear. But the part that always stands out to me is that the rationale for why they need to do all these things is to end multiculturalism in America. That's not my term. That's what Ross Vought said. That the reason why you go after immigrants first, that you start to implement all of these big radical changes, is that this is the beginning of the end of multiculturalism in America.
Newsflash: we are a melting pot, not a cultural mosaic. And I hate that word. I absolutely despise that concept. There is not one case in history where more than one culture has occupied a space without one culture being knocked off. And we're seeing it happen in Europe, where the UK in particular is being overrun by absolute insane invasion plans of bringing in all these people who hate the English. They hate everything that England stands for. And I think England's lost, to be quite honest with you. I think the UK is completely lost. And if we don't get our shit together, we're going to lose it here in America as well. So the whole deal is, when you come to America because it's better than where you came from, number one. And number two, you want to be an American, which means you want to subscribe to our values and beliefs, which are rooted in Christianity. And that you don't try and incite hatred against us here inside of our own freaking country. And you don't try to do divisive things by saying such bullshit as, well, I'm Greek American, I'm Turkish American, I'm Pakistani American. No, you're not. You're either American or you're not American. And anybody who grew up watching Schoolhouse Rocks in the 70s and 80s knows that there's a cost to be paid to become a cultural mosaic. You know who else is a cultural mosaic? Canada. Do you know how many white people there are left in the biggest city in Canada, in Toronto? 11%. I was there probably 10 years ago for work and was absolutely astonished. Didn't even look like anything that I'd ever seen before in Canada. So, this multiculturalism stuff, we're not trying to tell anybody you shouldn't be proud of your heritage. And if you want to say, look, I'm Greek, I'm American of Greek heritage, that's fine. But you aren't Greek American. There's no such thing as hyphenated Americans.
Certain fish don't swim in the same tank together.
Bingo. I'm waiting for my watch to go off here for some reason.
I was too. I was asking you if it was beeping already, because
it's not giving me a warning on my heart. So maybe I'm doing better these days. I don't know, but the stuff still fires me up and gets me pissed off. All right, let's move on to the next one here. This is, again, we're in the grab bag of news articles here. I thought this was interesting. Heat and cold. Gun ownership soars amongst Republican women, declines amongst Democrat men. Well, I would argue that's largely because Democrat men today at 20 years old have less testosterone than a 7-year-old man had 20 years ago. And that's truth. You can look it up if you want. We've covered it many times. I mean, the destruction of male testosterone and males in general on the Democrat side in particular is just unbelievable. But moving on from there, just because we've got so much ground we've tried to cover tonight, this is a shout out for Hurricane Helene relief volunteers camping outside right now. It's snowing, it's cold, and these people are doing God's work because our government sure as hell isn't, especially FEMA and S2. You've been there to contribute to the relief efforts. Here's an article. Again, if you want to read through the whole article, just go grab the brief off of our Patreon, patreon.com/survivordispatch, link below. There's a national shame unfolding, and we're going to discuss this one for a minute, S2, and there's a reason that we're going to discuss this one. So for years and years and years, we've seen these government programs that are meant to give every single so-called minority out there additional opportunity. And, equality of opportunity isn't the same thing as equality of outcome. But I actually just saw a government report that showed something like the top 10 races in the country and what their income level is. And guess who was the very lowest of them all? White families. And I mean, we're talking dramatically below these other races who the playing field has been tilted in their favor. But I've been saying for years, if you think that inner city black neighborhoods are poor. You have never been to Appalachia. You have never seen the destitution in Appalachia. And I have former family who used to live in Appalachia, and I was there frequently. We're talking about people whose, per capita income is $5,000-$6,000 a year. Household income, $12,500 a year. You haven't seen poorness until you've been to Appalachia, and it's all white people. And so this whole narrative that somehow everything's stacked in our favor, I could tell you story after story of myself and other people who have worked their freaking ass off for everything that we have in life, and nothing's been handed to us. And when you go to Appalachia, you see what happens in the poorest of the poor. As to speak to the Hurricane Helene relief efforts, the fact that the government has not been carrying their weight there, and anything else you want that has to do with Appalachia.
Well, that storm basically destroyed the entire area's economy, because that entire area, their economy is about tourism. Yeah, there's a lot to see there right now, but it ain't all flowers and trees anymore. One of the things that I've been seeing here recently, I got hold of some intel that basically the Amish came into Western NC and they built 100+ tiny homes to shelter Helene victims from the cold weather there. Well, apparently Cooper sent his goons in, and one particular goon, who I'll call out right now, let's see, what's her name? Harley Masters of Mitchell County NC.gov. Basically, they came out and they said, if you come out and you construct any tiny homes and they do not fall within the North Carolina code, that we will have to tear them down and you can't live in them. You know what? Pardon my French again, but Harley Masters, you can go fuck yourself.
It's almost incomprehensible. So were these the ones that were built by the
Amish?
The Amish, yeah. And something like 100 of them, right?
Yeah, let me tell you something. In a former life, I was around a lot of Amish people in the trades. And if those people don't know how to build a house that can withstand a storm, nobody does.
Right. Yeah, well said. Yeah, what kind of government insanity? This is like the same people who killed Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon.
Well, this is the North Carolina state government run by Roy Cooper, who basically didn't lift a finger for 2 weeks after the storm hit. It was all people like us that were going out there and helping these folks, and they're still doing it. There are a lot of all of these separate groups out there that are out there doing their own things in various parts of that state, and they're not stopping anybody. I think what has to happen, if they want to come down and they want to say that you're going to tell people that they can't live in these tiny homes to get out of the cold, I say you stand on your property and you say, get the hell off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, my point is it's no different than, the 7 or 8 civil servants who wasted a day killing a friggin' squirrel that should have never been killed. It's the same run amok bureaucracy that's not been held accountable for their actions, and that we need to blow all these bureaucracy 3-4 letter agencies and the people who work for them, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. They're not voted in place. They're not accountable for what they do. And to say that they can't sleep in these tiny homes that the Amish have built is not acceptable. Just not acceptable.
Well, I'll give you a happy note here. Basically, so the North Carolina legislature did actually do something good, and this is going back to Chapter 1. Essentially, the North Carolina legislature vetoed or overrode Governor Cooper's veto, saying that the North Carolina sheriff's departments didn't have to work with ICE. So they've made a law that says that the sheriffs do have to work with ICE now.
Yeah, interesting. That's progress, at least. We'll take it for sure. All right, so let me see. Next one up. Oh, so this is another essentially drone incursion. This happened at a Royal Air Force Base in Lakenheath, England. U.S. Air Force's Europe spokesman told this to the War Zone. The number of UASs fluctuated, and they ranged in size and configuration. there's another article floating around out there somewhere, and I want to say it was somewhere around 20 or 25 drones that essentially flew over this base and took all kinds of pictures, I'm sure, and mapped it all out. And what was the repercussions? Nothing. And it's happened to our military bases here, domestically as well. So move on from that one. The eyes. You see Scott Adams' comment, the eyes. It's always the eyes. So you want to talk craziness? This is somebody who's supposedly at the forefront of promoting MAPS, minor attracted persons, as being a sexual preference, and it's all okay. We shouldn't harbor any ill will against these people who are sexually attracted to children.
.org. It's short for virtuous pedophiles. Not virtuous as in they're better than everyone because they're attracted to children, but virtuous like having moral standards and a sexual orientation that they have no control over, like the rest of us. Before you get all worked up, I'm talking about pedophilia, not child molestation or rape. Pedophilia is the sexual attraction to children. It's a paraphilia. There's a link to more information about it in the description. Videos I've made in the past explaining the kind of human diversity and development. Molestation and rape are different. These are abusive actions that often have nothing to do with attraction. Many child abusers are actually sexually attracted to adults, but they act out on children, meaning you probably don't object to pedophiles because you're compassionate and rational, but you may loathe child molesters and rapists because they violate people. I personally try not to judge either.
Oh my God. And I've seen her speak before. I don't think there's any need for me to editorialize this because everybody knows where I stand. I'm pretty sure everybody knows where you stand, but I'll still cede the stage to you if you want to.
Why do we even give this airtime?
Well, because we have to expose the craziness, right? We have to go after this stuff. We have to stop these people from spreading this crap. Especially she speaks on a lot of campuses and indoctrination camps, and is convincing Gen Zers that this is all okay. It's not okay, and for a gazillion different reasons.
The kids are not all right.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we've got one last message from one of our sponsors, Native Path. I'm going to play that and then come back. We got a handful of funny ones to wrap up on tonight before we do the conflicted question. My name is Chris Heaven, and I'm the CEO of Survival Dispatch. I was a member of our national powerlifting team for many years and won many state, national, and world championships. Even though I'm in great shape for being 55 years old, I am not immune to father time. Most of us feel weaker and make more trips to the bathroom as we get older. U.S. Army research has led to a breakthrough for the #1 water for older Americans. It's not a special sports drink, but a mix with essential nutrients most hydration drinks lack. Keyword, hydration. These nutrients are proven to enhance muscle strength, reduce soreness, and improve bladder health. A Texas doctor leveraged this research and formulated a drink mix to help you stay strong. Click the link below for up to 44% off at nativehydrate.com/dispatch, plus free shipping and a free gift. This is one of the best deals I've seen for high quality BCAA drink mixes. Don't miss this deal. So I want to mention something with regards to Native Path before we go on to the next articles. And this was something I was completely unaware of. So I went and bought more. They sent me some and I burned through it all after about 8 weeks. So I went and bought more, and there was a checkbox saying, willing to accept emails and text messages. So I said, yeah, no problem. The very first text message that I got is that they provide for all paying customers support from people who can help you lead a healthier lifestyle. That has nothing to do with their products whatsoever. They'll actually give you free consults, multiple free consults as a paying customer with regards to your activities, the food you're eating. Our food supply is absolutely poisoned. I was really impressed. Like, holy crap! Like, where do you get something for free that doesn't have a really heinous price tag attached to it anymore? So anyway, check them out.
I've started using their stuff, and I've noticed a difference.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I'd like to try. So I'd like to try some of their collagen, but I don't know if I want to go invest a ton of money into it.
So I have some here, and it's flavorless, right? My wife has been a huge proponent for years, and if you see my wife's skin, everybody typically thinks that she's 15, 20 years younger than she actually is. Doesn't have a wrinkle on her face or her body for that matter. And she's same age as me, born in 1969. So anyways, let's move on from there. We got some funny stuff to cover here. Some funny stuff, some of it's not like hilarious, but it's still interesting. So this first one here, it cracks me up. So Hallmark is now beating CNN and MSNBC in viewership. And God bless the themes on the Hallmark channel, but golly, their programs are friggin' horrible.
CNN and MSNBC. You're at a point that you're okay losing to Fox. You're at a point that you're okay losing to Rogan. You're at a point that you may even okay losing to other podcasters, right? Election night, some people are putting more numbers than you are. We did that on election night. You're like, listen, those guys are amateurs. We're pros. We built the Titanic. The amateurs are building the Joe Rogan Experience, the PVD podcast, all this other stuff. But these are amateurs. But imagine you wake up one day and your producer comes to you and says, guys, what? Hallmark just beat us. Well, bro, what are you talking about? Hallmark just beat us. Tell me nobody's written that article yet. Bro, they wrote it already. That's bullshit. No. Hallmark? They make cards. Give them a Hallmark. Hallmark beat CNN and MSNBC in viewership last week.
No way.
Here's a
Hallmark?
supersized guide to rating in all 32 new holiday films. Can you imagine that?
Man.
How do you let Hallmark beat you? You can let a lot of people beat you. You cannot let Hallmark beat you. We're talking about practice, right? We're talking about Hallmark. We cannot be talking about Hallmark here, right? I mean, you understand
practice.
Anyway, that's pretty funny. And here's a breakfast table at the new MSNBC. The only thing that's missing, of course, is AJ from that one. And here is a new Thanksgiving tradition that y'all can start this week. And by playing this with the YMCA, or this video just got, there'll be no monetization for that one because we're breaking copyright rules. I think that was pretty funny. And, I hate to break the bad news, but, the unhappy Kamala, supporters have said that they're withholding sex for the next 4 years.
That's a rough one right there. Whew.
Well,
fell out of the ugly tree and every branch on the way down.
Yeah, they sure did. But moving on to the next one here. This is pretty funny. I'm going to make this full screen. You want to talk ingenuity? Here it is. Guy put a whippersnapper on a two-wheeler to cut his lawn.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely brilliant. I love that.
I did that with a leaf blower.
Right on. So here's the last one before we move on again to the conflict question. This is not funny. This is just downright amazing. And I felt like it was a great video to end, the main part of the broadcast on. Tell me that's not awesome. I like that.
For those of you that don't know, that is an American eagle. That is not a bald eagle. That's an American eagle. And here's an interesting little anecdote today. When I went out on my 2.5 mile ruck today, as I do every Sunday, I was walking towards the end of it, and I looked up, and on a street sign was sitting there a falcon with his back to me. And then he turned around and looked at me. So this was really ironic that you showed that after I experienced that today.
That's freaking amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, so let's move on to the next and last piece is the homework piece. So just a quick reminder or notification for people who are new to Survival Dispatch News. When we started Survival Dispatch News a couple years ago, I think this is episode 319, by the way, I was pretty adamant that not only were we going to report on the news, editorialize the news, but we're going to provide action items for our audience to, improve whatever the thing is that we're reporting on. And, since then I call it homework. It's homework for our audience. You'd be surprised the number of emails I get from people who tell me what they've done to complete their homework. So we have a movement that's formed, and I'm very happy about that. So in light of all the topics tonight, number one, share Survival Dispatch News with your circle and help us spread the truth in this age of citizen journalism. The mainstream media is on its final leg. So we get fairly highly suppressed because most strikes that you get now are 90-day strikes. And we've got a ton of them since we started Survival Dispatch News because they're trying to suppress us telling the truth on certain topics. We actually have, if you look at the brief, when you download the brief, there's a list of a few things we put up top. We ask people not to mention if we're on YouTube because they will smoke us. And worst case scenarios, you don't even get a strike and they just do a channel deletion. But if you could help spread the word for Survival Dispatch News, helps get the truth out to more people. It's the only way we're going to beat the algorithm as far as them, suppressing us and penalizing us for telling the truth. Next one would be to consider donating to organizations working towards less cheating in our elections. Clearly, there's a lot of work to be done. So we have a few that we think very highly of. And one of them would be True the Vote. So Laura Trump plays a fairly big role with this one. This one here is owned by my friend Jason Wilson. He's done just amazing job over the years of having really positive effects on voting and voting turnout and registrations. And then the next one is the America Project. And we work pretty closely with the America Project. These people are doing God's work and helping save the country in every way you can possibly imagine, and highly recommend that you support them as well. So let me get back to my note. Beyond that, and I already mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it again because it's important. If you have military or law enforcement experience, or if you are a licensed armed guard, consider volunteering to help Tom Homan's mass deportation efforts. There will be a campaign starting on January 20th asking for volunteers. It's going to take a lot of people. It's going to be ugly, but we have to do it to save our country. S2, you got any homework for our audience tonight?
Just going to be a revamp of some of the things that I've said in the past. Is everything starts at home, folks. Get involved, be aware of what's going on in your local politics, start getting to know your legislators in your districts, and if they're nut jobs, get them out of those positions, whichever way you have to, by any means necessary. And that doesn't mean that I'm advocating for violence, anything illegal or immoral or unethical.
Good segment. Well said. So check this out. I mean, this is the level of sanity or depravity we fall into. People in this area can't believe a local middle school teacher has litter boxes for furries and wants to ignore it. It doesn't make it untrue, worth considering things you don't understand sometimes. And look, I'm not sure what that means, but I'll tell you what, if a kid says that they're a cat and that they're not a human being, and you are supporting their sociopathy by doing things like this, you shouldn't be a teacher. You should be influencing no kids. So
get them therapy.
Yeah, well, fire them and then get them therapy, whatever. But, I vehemently disagree with that.
I was talking about the kids. I don't give a shit about the teachers. And fire them.
Amen to that. Amen to that. All right. So quick plug again for our Patreon, patreon.com/survival dispatch, link below. Free members get about 50% of the content. Paid members get all of the content, and you get access to our private signal chat, encrypted signal chat. We started it. We were looking for a way to get intel out if other sites went down. And between S2 and Mad Bomber Mike and some other guys on the Survival Dispatch team and an amazing group of Survival Dispatch insiders, it is unbelievable the volume of back and forth that goes on in that Signal chat. We never anticipated that. We certainly didn't. It wasn't by design. But I'll tell you what, pretty darn happy with the information sharing that's gone on there. And that's how we found out tonight that Kevin Ramsey, got jumped and got stabbed right here, stabbed in the corner of his eye last night in Nashville. And there's more to the story. And I'm not going to share it just now. His wife shared it on the Signal chat. If Kev wants it shared here in public, I'll share more then. I just don't want to share anything that he hasn't given us approval to do.
We might should bring Kevin on.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. Actually, I've offered that to him in the past, and I'll offer it to him again. There is something that he's mentioned. I got to be really careful with the powers that be out there because this is going to YouTube right now. But there is a certain compound where there's two parts to it, and you mix these two parts together in a glass bowl, and then you take it and you put it in distilled water, and then you drink it over a 24-hour period. And that's been shown to nuke all kinds of ailments, including cancer. And I wouldn't believe it if Todd Callender hadn't attested to it himself. Todd Callender's 6 feet tall, diagnosed with cancer at 14 years old. At the age of 40, was told that he had less than 4 weeks to live, and he weighed 109 pounds. And his doctor, good friend of his, took him to Mexico, and he was treated with this particular product there. Walked back into the oncology department 4 weeks later, and their jaw hit the ground, and he'd put on about 50 pounds as well because, once the cancer was out of his system, things started to return to normal. This stuff works, and it works so good that Todd has an entire office full, like stacked right to the ceiling, full of this product. Anytime it comes to his attention that somebody has cancer, he has one of his assistants send it out free of charge with instructions. So Kevin came to me and said that he had cancer in one of his kidneys a while ago. And I reached out to Todd and I said, "Hey, Todd, this is one of our most loyal followers on Survival Dispatch News. Can you help him?" And of course, Todd's answer was yes. Todd, is very well heeled, deep pockets, and he, loves to help other people. And he feels like he was saved so that he could help save other people. And I don't disagree with that. So he sent this product to Kevin, and Kevin goes in, a period of time later on, and the doctors are like, "Your cancer's dead." And we don't even have to do surgery because your body's already starting to absorb this dead tissue. And, it completely nuked the cancer and saved his life in the process. And it's amazing what's out there that we can't speak on YouTube, but we can on other channels. And if you're wondering what this particular substance is, send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com, sign up for free Patreon membership, whatever. Reach out to me and I will tell you what the product is and how it's administered. All right. The conflicted question of the night, S2, let her rip. You got it, S2? We're not hearing any audio from you, S2. All right, I will go ahead and do the conflict question then. Transhumanism is a class of philosophies that seek to guide us towards a post-human condition through science and technology. Ray Kurzweil, director of engineering at Google, claims that in just over 30 years, humans will be able to download their entire minds to computers and become digitally immortal. He also claims, that the biological parts of our body will be replaced with mechanical parts, and this could happen as early as 2100. How do you feel about the merger of men and machine? So I'm not sure why we've lost S2's audio. I'll kind of give this a stab from the perspective of I've had 32 surgeries under general anesthesia. I've been left for dead a couple times, essentially, where they basically told my family he's gone, go say your goodbyes. And just by the grace of God, I'm still here. And when they start cutting off body parts, it gets real and it hurts like hell. And I've had it happen, a number of different surgeries. But my left eye, this is a prosthetic eye. And I have a Captain America prosthetic eye that my wife absolutely hates. So I don't wear it very often. But I'm a little bit ambivalent on this. because I feel that some of the technologies that this guy is alluding to are called IoT devices. IoT stands for the Internet of Things. So we've had this explosion of billions of devices connected to the network in the past 10 plus years, where you basically take a dumb device and you put sensors on it, and then you connect it to the network. And then that information, is reported, collated. You make decisions from it, becomes part of like big data, for lack of a better term. My concern is that as you start replacing body parts with, the Borg, who just said that? Yeah, you know what? I apologize, Kanzi. I don't recognize your name from previous episodes, and if you've been with us, I apologize for that. It's a lot to try and keep up with the chat and produce your own show like this, but this is exactly like the Borg. That's exactly what it is. And the fact that these, devices will be on the network gives me pause. And I'm not sure that I'm 100% behind it. I'm in favor of things like this prosthetic eye, which, has saved me from being disfigured. But I don't know that I have a good answer for this right now. S2, what are your thoughts on transhumanism and, body parts being replaced, body parts that report over the network? Basically,
I'd be happy if humans could get a freaking grasp on how to fucking run a damn network, because my network just took a dump on me and I had to switch to the other one. How do I feel about this? Even more disturbing about that whole thing is, there's been a lot of stuff going on with prosthetics and things like that for people over the years. People have lost limbs and things where they have been able to reattach prosthetic limbs to people that are controlled through electronic impulses and things like that through their nerves. But what disturbs me the most about that is that it's one thing to collect data on the biologics of how people function, which is really what they want to do. But the other idea is having somebody with the control that could turn it off at any time. And if let's just say this whole Neuralink thing that Elon was out there pushing, somebody puts that chip in your brain. What happens if you piss somebody off and that technology ends up in the wrong hands and somebody just switches your brain off one day?
Well, what happens if your social credit score drops?
Exactly. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen here in the United States at this point in time. But my point being is,
well, maybe not at the level that the Chinese have, but it has already started in a number of different ways. So think about when you apply for life insurance or any other insurance products, they score you based on a bunch of criteria that could be considered the very nascent first steps in the social credit scores.
yeah, but that's been going on for a long time with insurance companies. That's nothing new. It's the same thing with your your car insurance.
But
how
that's
many
my point.
how many wrecks have you had?
Well, I've had plenty, but none of them my fault, other than one. The problem I have with it is that all these pieces will be stitched together to basically be a social credit score. And
I said my concern is we already know that everything they're trying to do is to establish control over every single human being on the face of this planet. That is the ultimate control, where somebody is trying to play God. I do not agree with that at all.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so quick notifications for our followers. We'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time per usual, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 7 days a week. Haven't picked the topic yet because I'm waiting to see what bubbles up to the top of the news cycle tomorrow morning. Tuesday, we've got Glenn and Eric Meter back from Privacy Academy, and we'll be discussing how to improve your online privacy. Again, 7 p.m. Eastern time Tuesday. Wednesday night, we'll be back. I have not chosen the topic for that. Thursday on Thanksgiving, we're going to record an episode in the morning. We will broadcast at the normal time at 7 p.m. at night. And Friday, Saturday is too far out for us to predict what news is going to be top of mind for people. So stay tuned for information on that. If you're involved in something that you think will be of interest to our audience and you'd like to come on Survival Dispatch News, send me an email, support@survivaldispatch.com. We're always looking for interesting people with interesting stories. I can tell you every Sunday I send out a massive email to over 250 subject matter experts. It's a weekly casting call. We're incredibly blessed to have a lot of people on that list. and it's all blind copied. So if you have something that you think our audience would be interested in, by all means, bring it to my attention. And if it would be of interest to our audience, we will have you on. Other than that, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless.
And hit that like button.
Amen.